Okay, so I have my template that I want to use. I have my board that I just put through the surface planer. It's nice and flat. And now I'm going to trace my pattern out onto my board. So you can pick where you want. If you want the stripes to line up in a certain spot on your board, you can also butt this edge right up against that edge. That makes it one less edge you have to cut, okay, which is what I'm going to do. I like this red coming through my project. You kind of pick where you like the stripes coming through. I think I'm going to have it come right through the handle there. I think that'll look cool. Make sure that your whole project is covered so you don't end up missing the bottom there. And the first thing that I'm going to have to do after I'm done tracing here is I'm going to have to make what's called relief cuts. Because some of these arcs are going to be too steep for my coping saw, and it's going to pinch the blade and break the blade. So what we're going to do is we're going to do some cuts right here. It doesn't really matter where, just a couple of them. And these are called relief cuts. So you'll see why they're called relief cuts in a second, but as I come through and cut with the coping saw, that'll break this piece off. I'll keep coming. That'll break this piece off. I'll keep coming around. That piece will fall off, and it relieves the pressure on my coping saw blade. I always want to stay on the outside of my line, just a little bit. Okay, we're gonna file that down and sand it up and clean it all up. So you want to make sure not to go over your line. If you start going over your line at all, what you want to do is back up and then kind of reassess where you're at. Some people try to fix their problem and they end up, making a really big problem because they go way outside their line. So I'm going to start by putting my project this way. So I'm going to start by putting my project this way and using the crosscuts. Move it over this way. Okay, so I'm holding my project because I don't want it to wiggle too much this way. If it wiggles too much this way, it might snap right along this line. Now I'm not really following my lines, that's okay. I just need a bunch of spots in here to relieve that pressure. So now I'll come in with the coping saw. Again, my first stroke is back to get that groove. Okay, it's going to help relieve the pressure. So right now, it's looking pretty sloppy, but like I said, I'm gonna come in and we're gonna file this down. I could even use a coping saw to clean that up a little bit more, or we'll sand it down too. Okay, so I'm gonna finish this. This side, again, I could use a saw to cut straight across, or what might be easier for you is if you just use the hand plane. keep cutting down until I'm at that line. That'll give me a nice straight edge when I'm done. Okay, so I'll finish up making those cuts, then we'll move to the next step. Okay, so this is the bandsaw. The bandsaw is kind of like an automated coping saw. You can see it has a thinner blade. Now it's a little thicker than a coping saw blade, but it is thinner, so it's going to let us do some curves a little bit easier. Some of the safety rules for the bandsaw, like all machines, safety glasses for all the machines. I'm going to keep my hands. Now your hands for the bandsaw, this is the one machine that's different. It's 4 inches. Okay? A lot of times we're just working with smaller pieces. We might have to get our hands in a little bit closer. That just means we have to be more careful. Okay? One person in the yellow box. Our guard. So this guard is up a little high right now. Okay? I'm going to lower it down to about a 1/4 inch above my project, and then I'm going to lock it down. Whenever you're changing the guard height up or down, you need to loosen this lock and then change it. Okay, you'll mess up the mechanism here if you don't. Okay, so it's loose. I'm going to raise it or lower it, and I'm going to spin this and tighten it. You should never have to mess with this lever back here. There's even a piece of tape on there that says do not touch. Okay, and you're never going to mess with this. This just shows you, what's inside. So it's a 14-inch bandsaw. Okay, because this wheel is 14 inches across, and there's another one below, and you can see it's just a big band of a wheel, like a big thing about a rubber band, okay, that just spins around. So we'll lock that down. All right, so I'm all set. This table does tilt 45 degrees if I wanted to do angles. I even have a fence here if I wanted to ride something nice and flat. So maybe if I wanted to do like this edge, I could, but I'm gonna do it freehand. Okay? So I just pull this out when I wanna start it, and I push it in to stop it. Again, I'm gonna make my relief cuts. I'm gonna kind of cut off some of the excess first. And I'm going to throw any small pieces, just throw them to the floor. It's safer that the pieces are on the floor than they're sitting on the table and you get them, in your way. Okay, I'm going to go just a little bit before the line. I don't want to go through my line. Same with the coping saw. If you ever go through your line, just stop right away, back up, and kind of I'm going to push those pieces away with my project. I don't want to use my fingers, they're going to be too close. And then come from behind, throw them to the floor. Pieces away with my project. Okay, I've been doing this for a long time, so this straight line is pretty easy for me. It takes a lot of practice. I would stay a little bit further away from that line since this will be your first time using the bandsaw. So that piece is stuck in there, I'm gonna turn the saw off. I'm gonna wait till this blade totally stops before I try to get it out. I can clear away these pieces. I don't want to try to get my fingers in there while that blade is still moving. So I'm going to wait till it totally stops. I don't want to put my project into the blade to slow it down because one, you're going to damage your project, right? But two, you could damage the blade. Okay. So that goes totally stop. And now I'm going to pop this out. This is why you want to be careful of cutting really tiny pieces because they can fall into this throat and jam up the blade and break the blade. Mostly the primary reason why these blades break, they can break. Okay, now it's a lot thicker than the coping saw blade. They can break though if you turn too sharply. Like if I didn't make any relief cuts and I just came in here and just turned that, okay, it would probably break the blade. So now I have the rough shape of my cutting board. The next step would be to file and sand these edges.